Question 4, and this one will go to Tom. Teachers are all about children, and children are products of their families. What will you do to protect Kansas families in crisis? Teachers believe that issues of poverty, health care, and child abuse can and should be addressed by the legislature. What would you do to address these areas of concern if elected?
Well, actually teaching here at 305 on the elementary, junior high, and high school level, probably the most critical area that I've taught at was the elementary level. When those kids come in, they are not conditioned to hide their feelings. So when they walk in the door, you can see exactly how they're feeling for that day. They might look sad, they might look tired. So you ask them, how's it going? Not so good. I didn't sleep at all last night. Well, how come? Well, my little brother was sick or whatever. So I think making sure on that front line that we're aware of how our children are doing on a daily basis and getting the care they need is very important. The teachers see those kids every day. They are going to know what their mood is. I think that's very important. I think the other thing that's important is to encourage families. Parental involvement is very critical. If you don't have that encouragement from your mom and dad to do well in school and say how important this is, it's hard to have those kids have that attitude. So I think some of the training our teachers need to do at parent-teacher conferences is to make sure that they understand how important education is for the whole family. That's a very hard thing to communicate and teach. So probably something critical that we need to work on here. And I think we could have some adult classes on how to make sure that education is valued as it is. Teachers have an additional responsibility in their classroom. Not only do they have to teach, they've got to motivate the kids, make it exciting, making sure that the things they're teaching are understood. Some things I think we can do to help that is use peer counseling, especially in reading. The reading, I thought, was probably the most difficult thing to teach. You've got kids that are reading at a very high level and some that are reading on a very low level, so it's important they help each other.
Well, the first thing you do is you don't cut funding back to the level of 11 years ago. If we have an increase in poverty, which I agree with you that we do, and I know that the free and reduced lunches are up in this district, you don't cut counselors and support staff that can help these children. I've been an attorney for since 1997. I've devoted my career mostly to low-income families. I've represented domestic violence victims. I'm on the Kansas Governor's Domestic Violence Review Board, and all of these things are important. We have a serious crisis in our communities, and we need to address this in the schools, and this is one of the reasons that it's so important to have good teachers who are respected and know that they are supported by their communities, because we know that you don't just teach reading, writing, and arithmetic during the day. You have a lot of other jobs that you have to do. And it's nice to talk about the families pulling their weight, but sometimes, as we all know, that doesn't happen. I'm very concerned about the fact that Mr. Archie homeschooled his children. He's been quoted as saying that he thinks that the state should just give every parent that $3,800 and let them go out and find their own school. And my question is, where does that stop then? Are we going to look for our own police car? Are we going to hire our own ambulance when we need it? And I think it's a huge slippery slope. We have, as you said in a question, 2 questions ago maybe, that we have a requirement that the schools, that the state, the Constitution of the state requires that we provide children a suitable education, and I think that starts in our school system.
I'd like to rebut that. In 2005, here in USD 305, we had 7,122 students. In 2012, we're down to 6,900 students. That's a drop of almost 200 students. Teachers, we had 581 in 2005. This year, we have 621. So we've added teachers. The other thing we need to look at is other employees. In 2005, we had 716 other employees, and this year we have 835. That's an increase of over 100. Total employment USD 305 in 2005 was 1,297 employees. This year it's 1,456. we have made suitable effort to provide the people, the talent, to make sure our children are educated and have the opportunity to advance themselves.
I would, yes. There's a survey that was recently released that says that voters these days really don't care about the truth. They just seek confirmation of their beliefs. And there are a lot of, I think, erroneous beliefs going on right now about public education. My opponent likes to throw out a lot of numbers, and I'm not really a numbers person, but I can, and we all can talk about anecdotes and things that we've seen every day in the school system. There's a belief that the school districts are hoarding money in various accounts that can be spent if it's needed to be spent. There's a belief that money really doesn't make a difference in public education. And I think that, as you said in one of your earlier questions, that we are now finally, after these cuts in 2008 and 2009, unfortunately starting to see the decline in some of the test scores. So I think there is a direct correlation between money and achievement and the outcome at the other end. There's a belief that private schools can do it better, which is what I referred to a minute ago. And again, I refer back to a friend of mine who said that the day that private schools have to take every student that walks in the door with accredited teachers and also has to essentially have outcomes and essentially provide outcomes, then maybe we could start talking about comparing apples and apples.
I'm sorry, this is not an anecdote. This is taken straight from the Kansas State Board of Education website. If you're going to be in the House or the Senate, you need to be able to look and read reports. You need to be able to evaluate that and see where things are going. I personally voted for the budget this year. That was a $60 per pupil increase to the base state aid, over $40 million. Unfortunately, the Senate rejected the House position, which would have added $150 per student to the base state aid. If you go like to look at the House report, you can read that. I would have rather had $150 added to the state base aid for students. The KNA didn't even come in and ask that to be even looked at. I would have lobbied. The Kansas State Board of Education would come and ask me and lobby for that extra $150. That was very disappointing to me. Here's money for teachers, direct to the bottom line. And not one lobbyist came and asked me to vote for that. Nor did they lobby the Senate. The Senate was very adamant on trying to embarrass the governor. I'll just put it where it was. They took the most onerous tax cut, yes, which is more money for people in Kansas. January 1st, they'll be paying less into the state, less the money has to spend. That's money they can spend on their own family. Food, clothing, education. That's right. It's their money. It's not the government's.
And can I just respond to that?
Yes.
Apparently, there are about 250,000 people in Kansas that may be getting a hefty $46 check from the state. Well, I don't know how many for sure. I think it's like 20-some thousand who make over $250,000 a year will be getting a $10,000 check from the state. So when he talks again about a tax cut, remember that this is a tax shift, and if the lawsuit that's essentially being decided right now comes back and says that we are not providing funding for our students, then we're going to have to do something else.
Let's talk about the details on that. Okay, here's the tax cut. Every head of household, if they're low income, their deduction went from $4,500 to $9,000. A $9,000, that doubled that. I'd sure like to have that. I'm not in that income tax bracket. I'd love to have that $9,000, especially when I had 5 kids. 98% of Kansas businesses employ 100 people or less. Okay. So we're looking at 53% of small business owners report less than $50,000 of income. 70% reports less than $75,000 of income. 82% of small business owners. This is the backbone of Kansas. Most of the businesses are small businesses. 82% report less than $100,000 of income. And 95.5% report less than $200,000. So the 250,000 owners are 4.5%. That's a very small part. Their total income tax would fund the state for just a couple days. So I'm willing to give families more of their money they earn and keep it. We're not going to balance the budget on tax increases. We sponsored a bill last year that was going to keep onerous stealth income property mill levies from going up. Basically, if your house went up in total value, the city and the county did not reduce their mill levy. They didn't keep their budget flat. They're happy to get that increase. Was that fair? I think absolutely not. I sat on the city commission when that happened. We did reduce our mill levy to make it match, so you didn't have a tax increase. We let people go in terms of retirement and nutrition. I didn't get one single complaint on the city commission about lost services in the city. We want to do the same thing for the state. If you look at how many employees we have per capita, we have 703 per 10,000. That's number 3 in the United States. Our population is 33. We can't afford that. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Archie just put out a flyer, some of you may have gotten it in the mail, and he's talking about ending the cycle of tax hikes and talking about creating new jobs. This, every economist and expert in the state has pretty much said that we will be facing this deficit if this tax bill doesn't change and we don't remove this, essentially this tax shift and this break for the wealthy. So you can do the math. It's really about arithmetic. If we have a $2.5 billion deficit in the next, I think it's by 2016, I may be wrong, it might be 2018, we would have to create 400,000 jobs in this state at the tune of about $34,000 a job. Now, that is just, I mean, we are essentially, I think, being held hostage to the Brownback agenda, and this is the great experiment. So I don't know how many of you want to be the guinea pigs, and essentially the real guinea pigs are going to be our kids. But that's what they're going to have to do. They're going to have to make up these jobs, or make up this money somehow. Tax shifts, increased property tax. We have, Kansas has the highest, is one of the top 10 in the country for the highest property taxes already. And this will be a tax shift, make no mistake.
Obviously, Janice, you've not done the math. If you look at our state population, our last census from 2010 compared to 2000, we had about 165,000 total Kansas residents. Adding 400,000 jobs is ridiculous. We haven't added 400,000 people in 30 years. If we look at the total employment, which was at a low of March of 2010, that's right when I started in the legislature, it was 1,320,500 employees. As of August of 2012, which is the last figures that are published, we now have 1,351,000 employees. We have added 15,300 employees. The other part of this is we look at the jobs that we've lost. We've lost Beechcraft, Raytheon, and Boeing. We either moved those operations to Mexico, which have very low labor rates and no taxes if you're operating down there. And we have Boeing move all of their operations to no income tax states, South Carolina and Texas. So don't tell me that wasn't part of their looking at employee benefits. Thank you.
Janice, I actually will have 1 minute, this will be the last one.
Now? Okay.
Now.
I've been looking for this paper up here. You've probably seen me shuffling around. There are other states that don't have income taxes. Alaska, for instance, doesn't have income tax, but they also have a big pipeline up there. And essentially, they're the second highest oil-producing state, collected $7 billion from its severance tax in 2011. And by the way, over 25% of the workforce works for the government. So one of the statements I wanted to make today, and I don't want to get away without saying this, is I don't think government is necessarily bad. I think that there's a place for government, there's a role for government. Wyoming is another state that doesn't have any income tax, but 40% of the nation's coal is produced there every year. So unless we have some big thing like that coming into Kansas, I mean, I'm not sure how he does expect to make up this deficit. I really haven't heard. Final
question? There we go. Each of us has felt a lifelong impact of a teacher. Tell us a personal story about a teacher, about how a teacher shaped who you are today. And we'll let Janice go first.
I am a product of public education. Our kids all went to public schools. I grew up in Washington, Kansas. I was just telling somebody this the other day. I had a teacher named Lila Speck in 6th grade, and I loved that teacher. She was left-handed like I am. She wrote left-handed this way and right-handed on the board like that. And I've always thought of her, and she was a huge influence in my life. As I said, I'm not a numbers person necessarily. I was scared to death when we had to take the math or the multiplication tables that day. I sat on the front row, and apparently I was mouthing the answers the whole time, because when it came time for my turn, she said, "Don't worry, you've already answered." So she was one of my favorite teachers.
My dad was in the Air Force, and I lived all over the United States. I went to more elementary schools you can probably count, a couple junior highs, a couple high schools. So you had to learn to make friends very quickly. But one teacher that had significant impact was Mrs. Shaw. She was my 3rd grade teacher. She taught me to square dance. Oh boy, you can imagine how that went over in 3rd grade. But the thing that I could tell, she absolutely loved to do every day, 20 minutes right after lunch, she read out loud to us. So I got to hear Laura Ingalls Wilder. I got to hear Walt Whitman. I got to hear some of the other classics. She read some Daniel Defoe things. I mean, it was just amazing the things that she covered. And that really spurred my interest in adventures of reading it to yourself. Because you can make those mental images in your head as you're reading along. And I kind of like that. So she really instilled in me a lifelong love of reading, and usually try to read a couple books a month. So it's important to keep yourself alive mentally and keep your brain active, and to be a lifelong learner. Very important.
I believe that's it. Thank you very much.
I'd like to thank everybody for coming out today. Thank all the candidates for being here. Let's give them all a round of applause. I'd like to thank Mr. Hall for allowing us to do this, school board members, all the teachers for coming out, our UniServe director, Sue Maples, Scott Bly is our NEA Salina president, I'm the vice president, Lisa for all the hard work, and everybody that participated. We just greatly appreciate it. We just thank you all for coming out so you can be informed voters. Mr. Waring, thank you so much for moderating. Have a great day.